Well, greetings, Mr. Colazar's class. We're going to look at separating mixtures. Now, we've seen that mixtures are going to be two or more things that have been mixed together. Now, anything that's been mixed together physically, what we're going to be able to see is that there's going to be some process that can be used to unmix them or to separate them back out. And so to separate a mixture out physically, a process is going to be based on the physical properties of the substances. The substances that we've had these different physical properties, and what we'll be able to do is we're going to be able to, if mixed, we can re-separate them out. Sometimes it's difficult, but it can be done. So our first separation technique, beginning at the top of the next page, you have four different boxes. The first one, you need to write down this name, filtration. So filtration is going to be a technique that uses a porous barrier to separate by size, a solid from a liquid by the size. So what we're looking at here is we have our filter paper, and the filter paper is allowed to keep the residue or the solid material up above and the filtrate or the liquid to pass through. So you are able to separate out the two parts of the mixture by size. So that's our first one, filtration. Our second one is going to be distillation. Distillation is a technique that's going to be used to separate by boiling points. And distillation, what we'd look at is a liquid from a liquid. Now, example of this would be showing our distillation apparatus. You're heating a material down here. Now, as it heats, the substance that boils first will be allowed to turn into a gas, and as it turns into a gas, it's allowed to move up. Thermometer here will tell the temperature, what the temperature is of that boiling substance, and as it moves up, if it moves over to the side, it's allowed to cool on this condenser, and the condenser allows that to cool down to a liquid and collect it over here. Once all of one substance is collected, the temperature will rise up, and as it rises up, it'll allow the next substance to boil off and boil off. So anytime we have two or more liquids, they can be separated by distillation. Our third technique, chromatography. Chromatography separates on the tendency of material to travel across the surface of another material. And our biggest example of this one to start out with is to look at ink. So if you were to look at different types of ink, they are usually mixtures of two or more different pigments. And so if we were to start looking at them, ink, if you were to put a little dot of ink on a page and then allow it to be in a liquid, as that liquid absorbs up the page, it's going to pull the ink with it. And as it pulls the ink with it, those different pigments are allowed to separate out into different colors. And so this could be a way to show what type of pen was actually used. If you were looking in forensics class, you could look at the type of pen that was used to sign a document or forge a document. And so chromatography, tendency to travel across another material, and they all travel at different rates. So think about pens or inks when it comes to chromatography. And our fourth one, crystallization. Crystallization is another technique that leaves the dissolved solid behind when the liquid evaporates or vaporizes. So an example here, this is a guy right here. He's at a salt farm and he's collecting some sea salt. As the salt water evaporates, it takes the water away and it leaves the crystalline solid behind. So water evaporates, solids left behind. Another example here, you can barely see on this side. Maybe a good example would be rock candy. If you dissolve a lot of sugar in hot temperatures, as it begins to cool, you begin to form that rock candy solid around the side. So we get that solid precipitate being formed there. So crystallization technique, solid dissolved. The solid is going to reappear when the liquid evaporates or vaporizes away. Now in lab coming up, there are many goals or many other separation techniques that we haven't discussed. So we just looked at four of them. There are many, many more out there. The goal is to use the technique to target the different physical properties of that substance. In our separation lab tomorrow, so lab coming up, you are going to be given a mixture of 4 substances. And your goal is going to be to figure out how you could separate iron, sand, salt, and sesame seed into 4 separate piles. So you could have your iron in one pile, your sand in another pile, your salt in another pile, and then the sesame seeds in a final pile. Whoops. So we're going to look at how you could mix these and how they could be separated out into 4 separate piles. So your goal is going to be to come up with and actually complete a separation technique in lab using your physical properties.